6 of the NFL season is officially in the books. Now I'm going to break down my biggest fantasy heroes this week and the biggest fantasy losers this week, plus an unsung hero. Got to start off with Raheem Mostert. He had a really good week this week for the Miami Dolphins. 34 fantasy points. He led all fantasy football with, points, and he had a really good week this week. 2 rushing touchdowns, 1 receiving touchdown, and he had about like 115 yards rushing. So he's been the featured back this week and last week with HA now out. HA's now out for 3 more weeks with his knee injury. But no, Mostert, expect him to see more production and more carries and get the total of the workload. Jeff Wilson's still coming back from IR, and we probably will see him this week, but I expect Mostert to still see majority of the carries. And he's, 9 rushing touchdowns so far in this season, leads the NFL in, rushing touchdowns. So he's really good in that aspect. So make sure to keep him. They got the Philadelphia Eagles this week. I keep him in the starting lineup, even with, the Eagles having a really good rush defense. I still expect him to get a rushing touchdown or a receiving touchdown, any kind of touchdown. He's going to get it for you. The next guy I have for a fantasy hero have to be Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen, Mr. Consistent. This guy is the only reason this Panthers offense is somewhat competent. He has been really good. He's been carrying fantasy teams. 28 fantasy points this week. He had a lot of targets, 13 targets this week, 11 catches, about 100 some yards receiving, and a touchdown. So he's been really doing good, better than I anticipated. I thought he was going to be pretty good, but he's been Bryce Young's go-to target. So I still expect him to continue to have production. He's on the bye week this week, so make sure you have somebody fill in that spot. But he's going to continue being that go-to guy for Bryce Young, and expect him to, keep getting that workload he's been getting so far. The next one I got, Amon St. Brown. He's been really fucking good for the Detroit Lions. Ben Johnson, this offense has been really solid. But Amon St. Brown, he's had, 30 fantasy points this week, and he's been really consistent being in that 20-point range. This is a receiver you could trust every fucking week to give you something, a touchdown or 100 yards receiving, give you double-digit points. So he's been that kind of guy in that aspect. And I really like what he did this week, right behind Mostert with fantasy points in the leaderboard. But just being that go-to guy for Jared Goff too. Now for my unsung hero this week, it has to be the Minnesota Vikings. 24 fantasy points. They gave up 13 points. Any defense that goes against the Bears, be ready to start them. They're going to give you a good game. Besides the Commanders and the Broncos, those were the 2 of the worst defenses in the NFL. Sorry if you did it that week, those weeks. But no, yeah. The Minnesota Vikings, they lead the NFL in blitzes, and they definitely got after Justin Fields and Bajan. 8 quarterback pressures, 5 sacks, 2 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, and it was just a bad week for this Bears offense. But the Minnesota Vikings capitalized. A defensive touchdown, too. This was a really good performance by this defense and Brian Flores. So this was my unsung hero for the week. Now let's get to my biggest losers of the week. Cole Kmet had to be on this list. 2 fantasy points this week, 2.9. If you still round it, it still was an ass performance by him. Justin Fields, if he's playing ass, then Cole Kmet usually his production's dipping. So now with Cole Kmet being there, I really wouldn't put him in the starting lineup. Now with Bajan being the starting quarterback this week and maybe next week too, I really wouldn't. I would be really hesitant where I would put Cole Kmet. If you have another tight end you feel comfortable with, or if you were putting Cole Kmet in your flex, I would rethink that now with Bajan being there. Maybe, Bajan having the more playbook now, having being more, adjusted into the offense and being able to go out the full week as a starter. Maybe Cole Kmet could get more touches, but I wouldn't trust it. Cole Kmet, you're not leaving the bench this week. Mac Jones is my next biggest loser. I thought his performance was bad as usual. Another interception this week. He's been replaced in multiple games by their backup quarterback. So, and then there was rumors that Malik Cunningham could come in and replace him too at some point in the game. Malik Cunningham saw some snaps at quarterback, but it's not looking good for Mac and Cheese. Unfortunately, if you were starting him at quarterback, that's on you. If he wasn't your start, if he was your starting quarterback, that's really fucking on you, and that was a bad decision. And it really tells how your fantasy team is doing this whole year. You might want to give up. The playoffs are out of reach. But yeah, Mac Jones, he's got to be in the waiver wire. He can't leave that bitch because he's just been playing really bad all season, and I expect things in New England to get much worse. But that's all I got for this week of my fantasy breakdown, my fantasy biggest heroes, my fantasy biggest losers, and my unsung hero. Make sure to check this out every week. I'm going to be breaking it down. Some players too that you need to sign throughout the waiver wire and the additions and stuff you need to make your lineup that much better and to help you get a win. As always, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Peace. Welcome back to another video for Six Man Blitz. In today's video, I'm going to be breaking down my Week 5 fantasy biggest heroes and my Week 5 fantasy biggest losers. Got to start off with the biggest fantasy heroes this week. If you're a Chicago Bears fan, DJ Moore did his fucking thing. And if you're really a Bears fan, you had him, you had Justin Fields, you had Khalil Herbert, you had all the Bears in your lineup this week.